Every year, millions of animals sit in shelters waiting for a second chance. Now, many of these animals won't get that second chance. Not because they weren't good enough or smart enough or likable, but it's just because nobody chose them. And most people don't think twice about buying from a shelter or adoption center versus buying from a breeder. But today, I'm going to tell you to think twice about it because I believe that adopting from a shelter is beneficial because it saves lives and improves physical and mental well being and is more affordable than buying from a breeder. So, after researching multiple sources and the methods of adoption versus breeding, as well as owning an adopted pet myself, I can confidently say I back my statement on why adoption is the better method of buying your pet. So, I believe, first off, that adopting a pet saves lives and reduces overpopulation. Because according to ASPCA, around 6.3 million animals go to shelters and adoption centers each year. Now, that's a lot of animals to be going through such a small system. And sadly, this leads to the euthanization of a little under a million pets a year, specifically 607,000. And these euthanizations can be prevented if more people were aware of the benefits of adoption and what animals are to offer from dogs, cats, maybe to even other exotic ones that are found, right? Because adoption saves an animal's life and it makes way for another animal to come in, right? That's the beauty of adoption. You're saving a life and then you're letting other animals come into the system with more time than usual, right? But a lot of people would refute that and say, oh, some people prefer purebred animals. Now, purebred animals can be found in adoption and shelters. You can inquire to your local shelter or other shelters around you, and you can definitely find what you're looking for. It just takes some searching because ultimately these pets are either strays or abandoned by previous owners, and they are findable. And oftentimes than not, these mixed breed animals tend to be a lot more healthier and don't come with as many health complications as regular purebreds or inbred purebreds, right? But how does this benefit us while solving the problem? So, first, it's shown that adopting a pet improves physical and mental health. But how does it do that? Well, according to the Human Animal Bond Research Institute, pet owners, especially those with dogs, tend to be more physically active, which improves heart health and fitness. That's basically, walking your dog on a leash, right? But you're getting, maybe your 30 minutes, hour of physical fitness in just by walking your dog. And it's beneficial to you because it reduces the chances of a lot of illnesses. That has been shown. Walking does help reduce certain illnesses. And another example is that dog, cat owners, pet owners have a lower risk of high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease compared to non-owners. So, owning your pet is a wonderful experience, right? You get to have fun with them, maybe play fetch with your dog, or, have a little something attached to a string, play with your cat. But it's enjoyment and it makes you happy. It makes you calm. It reduces stress, anxiety, and which leads to the lower risk of these heart diseases, which ultimately benefits your health in the long run, right? And also just interacting with your pets reduces stress hormone levels and increases those feel-good hormones like oxytocin. So, according to News and Health, the reduction of stress hormone levels comes from owning a pet. It comes from, being around a companion, a loyal companion that you can adore, love, have fun with, right? As I said earlier, owning a pet reduces stress, anxiety, reduces depression even, and it neglects a lot of complications that can arise, maybe because we're lonely or because we don't have somebody to talk to, maybe somebody to, um, you know, a companion to be with, right? Especially for older people, this has been quite common. That's why you'll understand that a lot of parents will tell their grandparents, "Hey, why don't you get a pet if you feel lonely?" Because it helps. Owning a pet truly does help your physical and mental well-being. Now, some people will say, but pets, they're a big responsibility. They can add a lot of stress. And owning a pet, it's implied that it's a big responsibility, right? You're in charge of a life and you have to take care of that. However, the research does show, as stated before, that the stress can be reduced by owning a pet. It doesn't increase stress because you're like trying to take care of your pet, but it reduces stress when you interact with your pet. That's the beauty of it, right? And one more thing to note. Okay. But beyond the emotional and health benefits, adoption is also the smarter financial decision because adopting is more affordable and it's more socially responsible. But how is it more affordable? See, buying a pet from a breeder or pet store requires a lot of money. You might be looking for a specific breed, a specific coat, and these breeders and these pet stores, that's how they might make their money or their living. So they'll upcharge, and then sometimes they don't come with essential services like spaying, vaccinations, veterinary care that adoption centers and shelters will already implement to make sure their animals are healthy, right? So, according to an article from Extravis, adoption fees are typically much lower, between $100 to $300, $500, and it will include services like spaying, vaccinations, and veterinary care. And in total, it costs less than having it done by a breeder or by a pet store who can charge, that price and more, maybe $500, $1,000, $2,000, depending on what you're looking for, right? And more oftentimes than not, buying from a breeder or pet store doesn't include those health services that an adoption center or shelter does. That's the benefit. It's cheaper and it's more responsible. It's cheaper because you're saving money with, health treatment, and you're also saving lives at the same time. But hey, buying from a reputable breeder is still ethical, it's still safe. That's true. There are reputable breeders out there. Not saying there aren't and they're all evil. There are. There are breeders that have a good living and are reputable by other people, recommended, right? Go to this breeder, you can get this nice dog. Even though that's true, it's still, and even though this isn't their fault, reputable breeding still contributes to overall overpopulation within these shelters, which then causes that chain reaction to where a lot of animals must be euthanized and killed because of somebody's choice, right? Somebody's didn't think twice. And that's why I ask you today to maybe think one more time about where you buy your pet from. Because if you see the lives saved, the health benefits gained, and the financial advantages of, owning a pet and buying one from an adoption center, the choice becomes pretty clear. So I believe that adopting a pet saves animals from overcrowded shelters. It improves your mental and physical health and is more affordable and responsible than buying from a breeder, buying from a pet store, right? Now, I just want to share a quick personal testimony here. Back in 2017, I bought this pet right here from an adoption center. We named her Zoe, and she was about a year old at the time. And me and Zoe, we hit pretty quick, right? We had fun. We would, go out walking and, explore our little neighborhood. We would, play fetch, and she would love running around in the snow. That was one of her favorite things. But when I went to the adoption center, I was actually looking for a different animal, not specifically her, but, that animal wasn't available, right? And I know it was a bummer at the time, but when I saw Zoe, I felt like I had still found a match. I felt like I had still found an animal that I could suitably be with and still have fun, right? And in the end, I don't regret my choice at all. I had plenty of memories with Zoe, and, ultimately, I feel like this whole story would have been different if I had chosen from a breeder or an adoption center versus the thrill of buying from an adoption center and, being able to save a life, but at the same time, being able to enjoy being with that animal. And for me, that was Zoe. Even though Zoe passed away in 2023, there's still times when I think about her and all the fun we had together. And it was certainly a blessing being able to own that pet. And I think buying from an adoption center, you can feel the same blessing that I had, the same emotions that I had, that joy, that excitement, the sheer love just for your pet. Because I think that if you ever consider the options between buying from an adoption center or a breeder, I think you should think twice. Because when you're bringing a pet into your life, I think don't shop, but instead adopt. Because you're not just going to be gaining a pet, you're going to be saving a life and gaining a loyal companion that will be with yours forever. Thank you for your time. I'm Will Seibert.